Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to WTO Forum. The uprisings in 2011 in the Arab region have been subject since to intense debate and analysis. The opportunities following from these events are huge. They are politically, they're socially, and they're economically. But they're also fragile. The world is observing carefully what is going on, either in terms of insecurity and instability, as well as progress and change. Now, there is also impatience in terms of social change being demanded. And in order to grab these opportunities, it's probably very crucial, as observers are saying, that the state and the private sector cooperate closely, and particularly to transform that social change into longer-term economic prospect and stability. Now, trade is an important element in this whole equation, and we know, and we undoubtedly know, that the events have affected the position of the countries in the region in both regional and global trade relations. Now, the questions for today are, what are these effects and how and where are they felt? Now, we're very fortunate to have two prominent visitors with us. We have Mr. Taleb Rifai, Secretary General of the World Tourism Organization, and Mr. Naguib Sawiris, former CEO and Chairman of Orascom Telecom. Gentlemen, welcome to our forum. Now, you both have extensive experience in and with the region. And to start with you, Mr. Rifai, could you share with us your views and your thoughts on what the impacts of recent events have been on the trade and competitive situation of the Arab region?
I think the impact for objective reasons must be divided into two parts. One is the immediate, momentarily impact of the events and the developments on the trade, commerce, and other sectors of the economy. And the other one is medium and long term. And they can be quite different in this regard. The immediate effects are obviously devastating. I will take tourism and travel as an example of trade in services and export services, and to show how countries like Egypt and Tunis have really paid a very, very heavy price on the short term, more than 40% up until now. Although the situation has stabilized a little bit, but it's still a very, very valuable lost revenues for two countries that are so dependent on the travel and tourism industry. This is just an example. I would suggest that we can divide these countries into three groups. Group number one are countries that are directly affected by the events, like Tunis and Egypt, and now Libya, of course, and some others like Yemen as well, and Syria, where the impact has been felt very, very directly now. Then there are the second group of countries are those that are affected for their association and their proximity to these countries. For example, Jordan and Lebanon had suffered so much in terms of tourism. Again, I bring this as an example simply by the fact that events are happening in the neighborhood. Morocco less affected, but still the whole perception about the region. And there are, surprisingly, a third group of countries that have not been affected. As a matter of fact, they may have benefited. The GCC countries and the Gulf states, for example, in the area of tourism, just to make the comparison quite correct and relevant, have actually seen a boost and an increase and a growth. So the immediate effect is varied but generally devastating. On the long term, however, we have different views. We can discuss them as we go along in this debate.
Do you agree with that view, Mr. Sawiris?
It's a correct view, I think, in order not to repeat what my colleague said here. We are suffering a short-term economical disaster, shortage of foreign currency, shortage of income. What we need on the short term is a Marshall Plan that will be directed to ensure that the democratic process is taking place, elections and so on. We need this kind of financing to bridge this period, which I estimate like a 12-month period. The other part, the help we need is help to make sure that the mistakes of the past, when we adopted the free economical model, and we said that it did not trigger down to the deprived categories of the population, we need some help on how to avoid repeating that mistake and making sure that a free economical model will trigger down to the masses which have been deprived from a decent life, education, and healthcare in the past. And then once we get to the democratic state and we have a democratically elected government, then what we need at that phase is encouragement to foreign investments by the foreign and Western governments to tell people, okay, now you have a democratic rule in these countries. We need to go out and help them establish their economy. Then we need help from all the institutions, whether it's IFC or KfW or all these or organizations like yours, WTO. I mean, by offering methodologies of how to increase exports from these countries on a temporary basis, relieving them from taxes or customs, and encouraging the SMEs and small businesses to be established, but in a very fast-track, aggressive model. The problem we have working with international institutions and international donors is that it takes an age to be implemented, and by the time the money comes, people have already drowned or died,
This seems to come back to the question of urgency and the need for help. You mentioned that help should come or could come from international institutions. Could it come from other sides, from governments, private sector?
Yes, of course. Help can come from any side, but I think also help has to be qualified. Help has to go to places where it makes a difference and in ways that it makes a difference. Help is now definitely needed, at least in the three very major countries where transformation has already taken place: Egypt, Libya, and Tunis. And this is where goodwill must be manifested, both by the international community and by the private sector. And for the private sector, this is something that is, for long term, quite beneficial. I mean, investing in any of those countries now is coming first, because there will come a time where they would become more competitive and more attractive, and investment would become even more challenging. Help in other parts of the Arab world has to be calculated, because things are still in the making and things are still changing. So we can't expect to be addressing the international community as if the Arab world is one block. There are different stages of political evolution now that are taking place, and we have to be quite clever and intelligent about them.
Given the urgency, who should actually calculate what help is needed where? Is it the government? Is it the private sector? Are those independent institutions?
No, it is mainly the governments, because they're in charge right now. But the governments require international counterparties, and these international counterparties are usually very slow and bureaucratic, and we need the help now. We have a problem now. There is a deficit now. People made this revolution and expect some results. They expect a better life, food, health care, education. They think this revolution will bring them all these in a way. But the fact is, we cannot do that on our own, because now we are engaged in building our democratic process, establishing a strong government. So we need all these institutions, IFC, World Bank, the European Union, to come and really cut through the red tape, pour this money to ensure stability in the meantime, and help us the way East Germany was helped in the integration, or the Eastern Bloc was helped to develop their countries into a free, economical, democratical model.
Okay, so you see a very strong role for governments, but you have commentators saying that the governments are not yet ready or not sufficiently in place to actually take that position and offer that kind of help. So there might be a gap. Do you see that gap too?
Yes, if you're referring to the governments in place now in the countries that we are referring to, of course, because they are governments in the making now. In 6 months, we may be seeing a completely different political morphology there. But the fact is that international help is needed, and help in good faith is needed. And I think I cannot I need to underline that as much as I can, because the climate and the situation there is also one that is not very free from skepticism and suspicion about motives and intentions, and some is justified and some is not justified. The second thing is we need to manage expectations of people in these countries, which are expecting now that they have accomplished at a very heavy cost what they thought the world was looking at them and expecting them to accomplish, and now they need the rewards. We know very well that it's not going to be tomorrow, but we need to manage these expectations. So that's where the international community is needed to come across, and to come across in style and in good faith.
Some final thoughts on that one?
No, I think we have to be optimistic. I mean, we've regained our freedom. we've regained the respect of the world, that we are able to fight for our freedom and to fight for the right to be a democratic state. Our role now inside our countries is to fight for preserving this very well-priced freedom that we've obtained, avoiding that the revolution gets hijacked by any of the extremist forces. But we need help, and we are not ashamed to say that.
It's beautifully said. Final word is yours.
I completely support Mr. Sawiris' point of view. I'm also very optimistic. I think the new political reality will encourage more investments and more business and better economic development. Economic development can never be seen as separate from political development, and businesses and commerce, trade and economic development can only flourish in an environment of the rule of law, transparency and fair play. That's the only way that the benefits can trickle down and can create better environments. So we're betting on a good political environment that would facilitate and support and sustain a good economic development. And that's why we hope that this is what will happen in a matter of months, at least, in the countries that we are referring to.
Mr. Sawiris, Mr. Rifai, thank you for these very interesting comments, and thank you for watching WTO Forum.